Hello, welcome back. I'm Luana, nervous system specialist, founder of the Good Human Academy, and here on my channel we talk about all things nervous system, relationship health, and trauma healing. Right before we get started, I want you to know that when I say the Good Human Academy, or sometimes I like to call you a good human, it doesn't mean that you need to be well behaved or buttoned up or these kinds of societal norms of behaving a certain way to be accepted. It simply means someone, a person, a human that is learning how to be kind to yourself, most importantly, and kind to others. That is what I define as good when it comes to the work that I do and my programs inside the Good Human Academy. In today's video, I'm answering the question, what is healthy anger? You may be like, whoa, Luana, that's a bit of a far stretch, but stick with me. Anger is an essential, real, valid emotion that all humans have the potential to allow themselves to experience because it's part of that fight, anger, aggression, flight, flee, fawn, and freeze response within our autonomic nervous system. When we think of sayings like, oh, that really makes my blood boil, or that makes my skin crawl, these are all things we can liken to a physicalized, visceral, somatic experience of a fight response, healthy aggression. So healthy aggression is the physicalized response, the fight response. It is not talking about being harmful to someone, being violent to another person, or being violent to ourselves. It's simply that life force energy that is designed to flow through us as a protective response. If we suppress anger, rage, that annihilation energy for long enough, studies show that we get sick. It makes us sick. Autoimmune disease, chronic illness, chronic fatigue are all things we can liken to suppressed and repressed anger because our bodies start to fight ourselves. That's what an autoimmune disease essentially is, the body fighting itself. Talking about this stuff can elicit a felt response in your body, in your system. I have made other videos on my anger series playlist where the dogs were in the background, and when I started talking about healthy aggression, they started wrestling with each other. So it's in the environment, it's in the sphere. So if you notice within yourself your own heat coming on or blood starting to boil and can really resonate with what I'm saying, it's okay to not override that and take a break and come back to this video or this playlist, part of my anger series, because I've intentionally made these videos short and bite-sized so that you can just take in little pieces at a time to learn this knowledge and medicine of healthy aggression and the emotion anger. The problem is we haven't been taught this. We haven't been taught how to process anger, healthy aggression in a productive and positive way. So what happens is, number one, people will lash out violently, either create harm to another person, their pet, a wall, or they'll turn it into verbal diarrhea or abuse. And create destruction in our world. And that we are seeing, as I'm filming this in 2022, there's violence and harm and war all around our world right now. Number two is because we're not taught this stuff early on, and it's kind of this societal global phenomenon of repressed anger, is that we'll suppress it. We'll, look out into the world and see the violence that's happening, and we don't have the tools to heal our own anger because everyone gets angry about something or has in our past. So we'll stuff it down, we'll stuff it way down and be well behaved and a good girl or a good man, he, she, they, them. And that is our way of coping with just not having the tools to move through healthy aggression, that fight response biologically in every human and mammal. So I want you to know about the roots of why we're not taught about healthy aggression and anger. And I'm talking about the roots developmentally, meaning when we pop out of the womb as a human and start to develop those neurological platforms into adulthood. I'm not going to talk about the history of, our planet and countries. I'm solely focusing on human development. So I'm going to give you one example that I found interesting when I first learned about this. I first learned about this when I was a nanny for a brief time when I was 20 years old. And this is what happens. A baby develops neurologically their motor sensory skills over a matter of months in utero, and then when they're little baby and the mom is breastfeeding the baby, what often happens at a certain point in time when those motor sensory skills, feeling, moving through space, they are like, wow, I can do things that I couldn't do a few weeks ago or months ago. And if you've ever been around a little baby, this is true. They grow and learn really fast. So if a little baby is breastfeeding, what often happens is they'll start to get creative with their hands, and they'll pull and tug on hair, and they'll scratch, they'll pick at the t-shirt or bra or skin, they'll twist, they'll squeeze, and this is the fight response coming online in their beautiful, fresh, autonomic nervous system. So normally when this happens, and this is not to put any blame or shame on anyone, it's simply that most of us are never actually taught this, is that when that little baby starts to pull, tug, or even like hit the chest or pinch their, when they get those little pinchies out, is the parent will either say, wow, honey, you're so strong. Look at that pull you have, when they start pulling your hair. And the mom or parent will maybe give some resistance and pull back. Wow, you're so strong, and make that eye engagement and make it playful and fun, and helping them explore their new abilities, their new neurophysiological abilities of that healthy fight response developing. So when their force, their life force, is met with a gentle, curious, playful, but still present and attuned life force right back, this allows the little baby to allow that fight response to integrate and to be part of who they are. That energy of, this is who I am, not that the baby has that logical thought, but it's part of their development of learning that when I push into the world, mom or dad pushes back in a safe and playful way. I'm not left, I'm not shamed or disengaged with. It's safe for me to push into life and really show up who I am. And this happens at a cellular level because the baby hasn't developed the cognitive prefrontal cortex yet. This is happening at a visceral sense, a visceral level. So that's really important to understand. That's pre-verbal development. The second thing that can happen, and that I remember from Peter Levine saying, is that some moms have said that when baby pulls or hits or squeezes, the mom will say, wow, my child is a monster. And this is very sad because it's a baby. It can't hurt a grown human. It's physically impossible. Yet the parent is assuming, for the reason that they haven't processed their own repressed anger, their own repressed aggression. So they just don't have the capacity to meet that child in the child's expression of the fight response. So if the parent hasn't allowed and healed their healthy aggression to come through and their ability to develop healthy boundaries, say no, and push against life, of course they're going to pass that on to the next generation, because we don't know better until we have healed through things so we can do better. So that's the second thing that can happen. And then if baby is pulling on mom's hair or scratching or twisting and squeezing, and mom either punishes, puts the baby down, or says bad girl, bad boy, bad baby, then that becomes a visceral experience in their cells, pre-verbal, that toxic shame and that internal knowing of when I push against life, that healthy fight response, I'm met with abandonment. I'm met with punishment. And this is why, and so many people that I work with as adults fear conflict, fear sticking up for themselves, that healthy fight response, because it often, most of the time, goes back to pre-verbal. So we can't figure it out. We can't heal this in our head. It needs to come from the body. There's this fear of conflict, this fear of, if I say, this is who I am, this is my need, this is what I believe in, then they'll be punished, abandoned, shamed, these kinds of things, ridiculed. So that is the root of human development. I just touched on it a little bit. The problem with this pre-verbal kind of conflict and rupture and wounding and relationship that comes up when it comes to expressing that healthy fight response for the baby is that many times, and I'm sure we all know someone in our life that's maybe a teenager, or maybe we were that teenager, where the parent will say like, oh, my teenager just doesn't do anything in their life. They just, they're not moving forward, or maybe they go to college and then they come back and there's this frustration with the parent of there's no like get up and go with their teenage delinquent child. And most of the time when we look back in the history of that child, was the baby child, and did the parents work through healing their healthy aggression so that they could meet their child in, yes, when you push towards me, I will meet you and celebrate your power, your healthy fight response. Well, the answer is no. Most of the time, a teenager that doesn't have the get up and go, the life force energy to move forward in life, or passion and joie de vivre, is because of this early patterning when it came to that sympathetic nervous system fight response being met with suppression. Keeping this video short and to the point of what is healthy anger, I want to leave you with one example, and that example I pulled from my own life. It happened a few weeks ago, and it goes a little something like this. I am an auntie, a proud auntie, not a perfect auntie, but a proud one, and I have two little nieces and nephews. So my niece is 10 and her little brother is 4. So different strengths physically and different stages in development. So what happened was an opportune learning experience and integration of this stuff into real life. So I'm going to share this with you so that maybe it's helpful, you can learn something, or have a little laugh or be proud if you've also kind of gone through this yourself. So what happened was we were sitting down for breakfast. It was like 9 a.m. We were with the grandparents. There's me, mom wasn't there, she was working, and then we have the 2 kiddos. And the 4-year-old, he was sitting in his special little high chair that his opa made, and he had a little blanket beside him, and his sister, the 10-year-old, rocks up on the bench beside him, and he pulls the blanket away from her, and she is a bit of a firecracker, so she yanks it right back and hits her brother. And so I was sitting there, and I had to wake up quick, and jumped in there, and first of all, I observed, because little 4-year-old, I won't share their names just to keep them private, but he started to cry because it was scary, and I think it hurt his arm what his sister did by yanking the blanket away from him. So I sat there for a little bit, a minute or two, just to see if they could work it out themselves, the dynamic, and it didn't really work itself out. So first of all, I started to hold the 4-year-old and soothe him, and once he kind of processed that fear and sadness and started to regulate, he went to Nana, and I'm just being very explicit that I know not everyone has all these adult figures to process this. This was quite a unique experience. So 4-year-old settled in my arms and then went with Nana. So then I could sit with my little niece, who's 10, and help her kind of work through, that wasn't the right thing to do. Your actions hitting your brother, it's not okay. So that's a healthy boundary to set, and it's essentially saying your actions were not okay. However, you are a wonderful, lovely, darling human, and let's parse this out together. So here is really important to know is that I did not shame her in terms of toxic shame of saying you're a bad person because you hit your brother. that's not what happened. It's healthy shame of saying the behavior that you did is not allowed. I'm not going to let you hit your little brother. However, you are still 100% lovable, and let's get in here and work this out together. So there's the aggression, in this case, actual physical, and then we had an opportunity to repair. And how we repaired that is, first of all, I asked her what she was feeling inside, and she's like, oh, I just felt this in my stomach, this like, this energy of wanting to fight. And in my head, I was like, oh, great, she's connected to her fight energy. Like, this is fabulous. And I shared with her that I feel that exact same fight energy coming up from my guts. And there's this impulse, this organic impulse to fight back when someone does something that is maybe mean or just unaware of, my presence and maybe how I feel in the moment. I have that impulse as well. And I've learned, I told her this, that over time, how to, channel that impulse in a healthy way. And so there was this, we're kind of like riding this wave together of relating and regulating, essentially co-regulating. There was no withdrawal. She wasn't punished. She wasn't shamed, or there was no going to send her to her room to figure things out. None of that stuff, because that would not be a repair. That would just continue the rupture. So what happened after that was I told her, hey, after breakfast, I'm going to show you a few ways that we can kind of move that fight energy together. So being a 10-year-old, she's curious and she's an Aries, so she's always ready to try something new. So after breakfast, we did these tools that I teach in my one-on-one stuff and my programs. And being a 10-year-old, she isn't really inhibited, so she loved it. And you could see her shoulders roll back and her eyes lit up, and she looked so proud of herself that she could feel that life force energy flowing through her and stand proud and tall. And that all came out of hitting her brother, which, they can come back together, and they did. We ate breakfast side by side, and there was no resentment or cattiness between them. So that's one example of how we can kind of change the curveball, change our inheritance, if you will, of how we express anger in a healthy, life-giving way instead of suppressing that sympathetic nervous system fight response. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you stick around on my anger and healthy aggression playlist and watch my other videos. I'm doing them in bite-sized pieces so that it's not overwhelming and you can just watch a little bit here and there and integrate this learning into your own life. Make sure you like and subscribe to my channel if you're new here, and if you've been around the block for a while. I love having you back and chatting with you. Take good care, and I'll see you in the next video.